Now this is one of the best, strongest, and fastest leveling build for the sorcerer in season 9. With this build you can easily level from level 1 to 60 without needing any specific gear or legendary aspects. With this build you can easily destroy groups of enemies and melt bosses, which will level you to level 60 very quickly. I have tested all the abilities while leveling, and this is a really easy and fun build to play, and I highly recommend you to watch this video from the beginning to the end to see how everything synergizes. So let's check this out. So first I'm going to show you easily clearing a tier 10 pit, allowing me to go to difficulty torment 1, and I don't even have good gear. And this build can easily destroy huge groups of enemies and shred bosses. Now I have tested all the skills, and Fireball was the best skill to easily eliminate groups of enemies, while Hydra is strong for single target damage. And since you'll be leveling, you'll always be switching out your gear for better gear until you reach level 60. So when leveling, it is best to just equip the gear with a higher item power level. And then once you're level 60, then you want to target farm your gear for a specific endgame build. And ideally you want to start tempering your gear once you're around level 40 plus to greatly increase your damage and survivability. And I'll have this full build layout in a D4 build planner in the description below. And with this leveling build, there are many skills that complement each other, offering a lot of powerful combinations, but I'll cover everything in more details in their dedicated sections. So next I want to mention some quick tips when you first start your character. You first want to equip your pet so your pet can automatically pick up gold and materials. And you can easily equip your pet by going to your character screen, then clicking on the wardrobe. Next you want to teleport to the mercenary den and hire your mercenaries to aid you in battle and provide passive buffs. And lastly, you want to make sure you always use your potions and elixirs when you're high enough level, as they will greatly increase your experience gain, allowing you to quickly level to level 60. Okay, so next for the skills. Now the basic skill I'm using is Firebolt, and this skill will fire a firebolt piercing and burning enemies. Now the main reason we're using this skill is to gain mana, and since this is a leveling build, you will be using your basic skill a lot until you're high enough level and can maintain your mana. The next skill I'm using is the core skill Fireball, and this skill will fire a fireball that burns and does tons of AoE damage. And if the enemy has low health, this skill will automatically execute them. This skill is really powerful to easily destroy groups of enemies. The next skill I'm using is Frost Nova, and this skill will freeze and apply vulnerable to enemies. This skill is the only way we can apply vulnerable to enemies, so you want to save this skill against elite and bosses. And since this skill freezes all the enemies around you, it's also a great defensive skill. The next skill I'm using is Hydra, and with this skill you will summon a Hydra that does tons of fire damage, and you can summon 2 Hydras at a time. And since this skill is a conjuration skill, this skill will pair with a passive skill on the skill tree. The next skill I'm using is Familiar, and this skill will summon a familiar matching the element of your last cast. So the familiar will ideally take the fire element, doing burning damage, and you can have up to 6 familiars at once. And since the skill is a conjuration skill, this skill will pair with a passive skill on the skill tree. And the last skill I'm using is a mobility skill, Teleport, and this skill will teleport you and make you unstoppable. Teleport will also increase your movement speed, so this skill is really useful to speedrun dungeons and breaking out of crowd control effects. Okay, so next for the enchantments. Now the first enchantment I'm using is the Fireball enchantment, and this enchantment is important for leveling. The Fireball enchantment will explode enemies in a fireball when you kill them, doing tons of AoE damage. So with the Fireball enchantment, you can easily destroy groups of enemies, so make sure you grab this enchantment first. The next enchantment I'm using is the Familiar enchantment, and with this enchantment you will have a chance to summon a familiar when you use a conjuration skill. And since you'll be using Hydra all the time, you can easily summon tons of familiars, and having tons of summons out will pair with the passive skill Primordial Binding, which will greatly increase your summon damage, movement speed, and mana regeneration. Okay, so next for the Horadric Spellcraft, and the Horadric Spellcraft is this season's power. So the most useful catalyst for this build is Cosmic Anomaly, and this catalyst will summon up to 5 anomalies that deal damage over time. When activating your catalyst, your anomalies will explode, doing tons of AoE damage, and while at 5 anomalies, you will be unstoppable. And it's important to pair this catalyst with Frost Nova, so you don't activate your catalyst all the time. Pairing this catalyst with Frost Nova will allow you to instantly delete elite elites and bosses, because your catalyst will explode when using Frost Nova, and having anomalies will count as summons. So this catalyst will pair with the passive skill Primordial Binding, which will greatly increase your summon damage, movement speed, and mana regeneration the more summons we have. And make sure you level up your catalyst to at least level 10 to get the bonus effect. Next, for the infusion, I'm using the Smoldering Embers, and this will make your catalyst do fire and burning damage. And we are using this infusion because our main damage is fire and burning damage. Now for the Arcana, you can use whatever Arcana you have. Since you will be leveling, you won't have all the Arcanas. So I'm using Fractured Core, which will deactivate the monster's damage resistance aura effects, but in return you'll take more damage. Reactive Ooze, which will increase your resource regeneration, and Nightmare Orb, which will fear enemies. But I do want to mention that if you have Shifting Powder, then you want to use this Arcana because this will increase your movement speed, and having high movement speed is really strong for leveling, as you can speed clear areas, allowing you to level up faster. Unfortunately, I didn't get the Shifting Powder Arcana yet, so I can't use it. Okay, so next for the mercenaries. Now for the hired mercenary, I chose Subo, and this is the skill path I took. One of the main reasons I chose Subo is because of the skill Seeker, which will reveal all enemies around you. This skill is really good to easily locate groups of enemies to destroy them. This skill will also reveal herbs around you, so you can easily gather them. And having herbs is useful to craft potions and elixirs, which will greatly increase your experience gain. Then I headed left and took Wire Trap, which Subo will place a trap on the floor that slows enemies. Then I chose Ready at Hand, which will increase your movement speed, and having high movement speed is important for leveling. Then I chose Cover Fire, which Subo will shoot a volley of arrows that slows enemies. And lastly, I chose Opening Fire to increase my critical strike damage. And for the reinforcement, I chose Variana and chose the skill Bloodthirst, which will increase your attack speed when Variana uses Bloodthirst. And increasing your attack speed will make you cast your skills faster. And when you cast any skill in combat, Variana will use Bloodthirst. Okay, so next for the skill tree. Now this is a leveling build, so with this skill tree you don't need any specific gear for this build to work. This build is really strong for quickly leveling to level 60, and the full skill tree layout will be in a D4 build planner in the description below. And in the D4 build planner there will be a leveling path that you can follow, but ideally you first want to grab all your skills for the action bar, and then you want to increase your damage and then your survivability. So starting with the basic skills, I put 1 point into Firebolt, a point into Enhanced Firebolt, and a point into Flickering Firebolt, and this skill will fire a firebolt piercing and burning enemies. Now the main reason we are using this skill is to gain mana, and since this is a leveling build, you'll be using your basic skill a lot until you're higher level and can maintain your mana. Next for the core skills, I put 5 points into Fireball, a point into Enhanced Fireball, and a point into Greater Fireball, and this skill will fire a fireball that burns and does tons of AoE damage, and if the enemy has low health, this skill will automatically execute them. This skill is really strong to easily destroy groups of enemies. Next I put 3 points into Elemental Dominance, and this skill will greatly increase your core skills damage when cast above 50 mana. Next for the defensive skills, I put 1 point into Teleport and a point into Enhanced Teleport, and this skill will teleport you and make you unstoppable. Teleport will also increase your movement speed. This skill is really useful to speedrun dungeons and break out of crowd control effects. Next I put 1 point into Frost Nova, a point into Enhanced Frost Nova, and a point into Mystical Frost Nova, and this skill will freeze and apply vulnerable to enemies. This skill is the only way we can apply vulnerable to enemies, so you want to save this skill against elites and bosses. And since this skill will freeze all the enemies around you, it's also a great defensive skill. Next I put 3 points into Glass Cannon, and this skill will greatly increase your damage, but in return you'll take more damage. Next I put 1 point into Energy Focus, and this skill will grant you a barrier every couple seconds if you're not losing life. Next I put 3 points into Dampen Layer, and with this skill you'll gain damage reduction while you have an active barrier. And next I put 1 point into Elemental Entombment, and this skill will give you a chance to reset the cooldown of one of your defensive skills when you critically strike an enemy. Next for the conjuration skills, I put 5 points into Hydra, a point into Enhanced Hydra, and a point into Roaring Hydra. And with this skill you'll summon a Hydra that does tons of fire damage, and you can summon 2 Hydras at a time. And since this skill is a conjuration skill, this skill will pair with a passive skill on the skill tree. Next I put 1 point into Familiar, a point into Enhanced Familiar, and a point into Invoked Familiar. And this skill will summon a Familiar matching the element of your last cast, so the Familiar will ideally ideally take the fire element, doing burning damage. And you can have up to 6 familiars at once. And since this is a conjuration skill, this skill will pair with a passive skill on the skill tree. Next, I put 3 points into Mana Shield, and this skill will gain you damage reduction every time you spend 100 mana. And next, I put 3 points into Primordial Binding, and this skill will increase your summoning damage, movement speed, and mana regeneration for each active summon up to 10 summons. Next, I put 1 point into Align the Elements, and 3 points into Protection, and this skill will grant you a barrier after using a cooldown skill. So this skill is really important for gaining a barrier, and we're using 3 cooldown skills for this build. Next, for the mastery skills, I put 3 points into Inner Flames, and this skill will greatly increase your damage while you're healthy. Next, for the ultimate skills, I put 3 points into Permafrost, and this skill will greatly increase your damage while you have a frost skill on your action bar. And the frost skill we're using for this build is Frost Nova. And then I put 3 points into Icy Touch, and this will greatly increase your damage to vulnerable enemies. Next, I put 3 points into Elemental Synergies, and this skill will increase your damage base for each elemental type you have equipped. Next, I put 3 points into Fiery Surge, and this skill will greatly increase your mana regeneration after killing a burning enemy. And then I put 3 points into Endless Pyre, and this skill will greatly increase your burning damage. Next, I put 3 points into Soulfire, and this skill will reduce the mana cost of your pyromancy skills and increase their damage. And next, I put 3 points into Warm, and with this skill you will heal for each nearby burning enemy. And last but not least, for the key passive, I put a point into Enlightenment, and this states casting any skill grants 1 stack of Enlightenment, or grants 8 if your previous cast was a different element. After gaining 100 stacks, you become enlightened, can no longer gain stacks, and lose 10 stacks per second. While enlightened, your damage bonus with fire, lightning, and cold are equal to the highest among them, and you gain 70% increased damage, 45% mana regeneration, and 30% attack speed. So this key passive will greatly increase your damage, mana regeneration, and attack speed for a short time, which is really useful to easily burst down bosses. Okay, so that's the full skill tree layout for this leveling build to speed level to level 60 very easily. Now I'll have this full skill tree layout in a D4 build planner in the description below, and in the D4 build planner I will have a leveling path that you can follow. Okay, so next for the gear. Now, since this is a leveling build, you'll be always switching out your gear for better gear. So ideally, you just want to equip the gear with the higher item power level until you reach level 60. Gear with higher item power level will have better stats, and on weapons, it will have more damage, and on armor, it will have more armor. So it's important to always equip the higher item power level on your weapon, as this will greatly increase your damage. And capping out your armor at 1000 is important to easily survive any content while leveling. But once you reach level 60, you'll start getting max out item power level gear, and at that time you will want to get specific stats depending on the end game build you're aiming for. Now, one stat I like to have on my boot and amulet is movement speed, because having high movement speed will allow you to speed clear areas a lot faster, gaining you tons of experience. And since you're leveling, you're not going to have all the legendary aspects, so you want to use any legendary aspect to either increase your damage or survivability. And you want to start tempering your gear at level 40 plus, because tempering your gear will greatly increase your damage and survivability. And since you're still leveling, tempering your gear will be very cheap, so it's worth doing. And always make sure you're using a potion and 3 elixirs to greatly increase your experience gain. Okay, and really quickly, checking out my stats, I have over 1000 armor, which is above the armor cap of 1000, and this is important for survivability. And if you check out my movement speed, I have 199.2 movement speed, and movement speed is very important when leveling to speed clear areas so you can level up faster. Okay, so next for the Paragon Board. Now, since you're leveling, for the Paragon Board, you will want to just go directly for the legendary nodes, because you will either have few amount of glyphs and your glyphs will not be leveled up. So getting legendary nodes will greatly increase your damage. So as you can see, for the Paragon Board, I took path that directly goes to the legendary node. Now I'll quickly skim the path I took, but ideally once you're at level 60, you will want to start building endgame builds, and I'll have a fully optimized Paragon Board when I reach endgame. Okay, so thanks for checking out one of the best, strongest, and fastest leveling build for the sorcerer in season 9. With this build, you should easily level from level 1 to 60 very quickly. With this build, you can easily destroy huge groups of enemies and melt bosses in seconds. This is a really fun and easy build to play, and I'll have this full build layout in a D4 build planner in the description below. Hope this helps in more Diablo 4 videos to come, so stay tuned. And of course,